Good Monday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, good to go. Johnson & Johnson's coronavirus vaccine is now back in action in most states, though now it comes with a warning label on those rare but serious blood clots. Why some states are still holding off on the one-dose vaccine. As it happened, family members of Andrew Brown Jr., a black man fatally shot by police in North Carolina, are expected to view body camera footage of the incident today. The reason behind the delay and the latest on the 7 deputies involved in the tragic incident. Benchmark. As President Biden reaches his first 100 days in office, NBC News has crunched the numbers on his job performance so far. How does America view the 46th president as he prepares to address Congress and the country this week? And snubbed, the 93rd Academy Awards closed out their mostly uneventful ceremony with a winner that set the internet ablaze. We'll show you the highlights, the winners, and the upsets that no one saw coming. I don't think either of us made it through it last night, right? So
I did make it to the end.
You did?
Yes.
Oh, you did? Wow.
I did. Powered through.
How you doing now?
Powering through.
I didn't. I went to bed. So
you made the right choice.
Let me know if I can pick anything up for you today. We'll get to that a little bit later. But first, Johnson & Johnson, one of America's crucial weapons in the fight against the coronavirus vaccine, is now back on the front line.
Most states are restarting their rollout of Johnson & Johnson's single-dose vaccine after the FDA cleared it for use Friday. The shot now comes with a warning about serious but rare blood clots. This comes as the U.S. sees a concerning decline in daily vaccinations. The country's 7-day average has now dropped to its lowest level in a month, going from nearly 3.2 million a day to 2.6 million shots a day. Even though the numbers are still high, health experts now have a new challenge, convincing people to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine if that's the one that is offered. NBC News health and medical reporter Erica Edwards is following the latest on the pandemic for us this morning. So, Erica, a lot of states started using J&J again this weekend. What has the restart of the rollout been like so far?
Hey, Joe, good morning. As you said, many state health departments followed the advice of the CDC and FDA to resume shots of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Now, it's going to take some areas a little bit longer to get back to get rolling again. Some areas, some clinics had to reschedule a lot of Johnson & Johnson appointments that had to be canceled a few weeks ago. But mass vaccine sites, like one in New York City, were able to get back on track. Speaking of, 3,800 people were vaccinated with the Johnson & Johnson shot at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway this past weekend. Now, public opinion still remains a little bit mixed. Some not as eager to get the vaccine.
It's concerning for me as a parent or as a daughter, family member, whatever. You don't want to be that person going through any type of side effects. It's only 15 cases out of more than 8 million people who got the shot. So it's very minimum. So I felt safe.
I wouldn't have got the Johnson & Johnson. Too risky, especially if there's other alternatives.
Yeah, so those alternatives, as we know, are the shots from Moderna and Pfizer, both given in 2 doses. Joe?
Erica, let's talk about this drop in daily vaccinations. Now, no matter where you live right now, everyone over age 16 is eligible. So what's happening here? Why the drop?
We started to see that decline back on April 13th when the FDA and CDC first recommended the pause on the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. However, that's not the only reason we're seeing a decline. In fact, it's probably pretty complicated. The first wave of vaccinations were given in nursing homes, long-term care facilities, as well as among older adults who are really eager to get that vaccine. Now we're entering a new phase where perhaps some people are more comfortable waiting for an appointment at their own doctor's offices. The administration is probably going to need to change some tactics. Instead of sending out large shipments to mass vaccination sites, smaller shipments to more clinics in order to reach more remote locations and perhaps those clinics that serve older adults who are unable to leave their home. Joe?
Erica, we do have some good news this morning for travelers. According to the New York Times, the European Union says it plans to open up travel to fully vaccinated Americans later this summer. What more can you tell us about this plan?
That's right, Joe. The European Medicines Agency recognizes and approves of the vaccines that we use here in the U.S., meaning they will welcome back American tourists later this summer. Now, the question is, how do you prove that you're fully vaccinated? These cards that we get at the pharmacy are not going to cut it. The U.S. and the EU are in talks to try to figure out some sort of government-issued certificate. No word yet on when those details will be announced. Joe.
All right, Erica, thank you so much. The CDC says millions of Americans are not going back for their second vaccine dose. As NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas explains, the reasons could be more than just vaccine hesitancy.
As the vaccine rolls out, 138 million Americans have gotten at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. New CDC data shows 8% of people have missed their second shot of the Moderna or Pfizer vaccines. A New York Times analysis says that amounts to about 5 million people, though some may have been missed in the data by getting a second shot at a different location than the first.
A lot of people got scared, especially after they put a pause on the Johnson & Johnson, and they said, well, maybe vaccines are not safe. When in reality, the vaccines are very, very safe.
The reasons why people skip their second dose vary. Some face scheduling issues with a number of vaccine providers canceling second dose appointments because they ran out of supply. Others worry about side effects or think the first shot is effective enough. Nathan Nobis is a college professor who was nervous to get his second dose after experiencing ringing in his ears, but ultimately decided to move forward.
All the doctors that I spoke with said that, well, it would be worse to get COVID than have this ringing in your ears because, COVID might lead to death, and that would be very bad.
In Arkansas, officials say data suggests 11% may have skipped their second dose. Health workers are now calling people to make sure the shots haven't been missed. The Biden administration says 8% is relatively low compared to other multi-dose vaccines, some believing 80% efficacy off the first dose was enough.
How important is it to get a second dose?
If you only get one shot, you might not be protected against all the different variants because your immune system is not ready for it.
In the race toward herd immunity, doctors stress the second dose is key to full protection. Guad Venegas, NBC News.
Let's bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar. Dr. Azar, good morning. Thanks for being with us on this Monday morning. So let's talk about this second dose. Is skipping the second dose a huge problem? Does it really eliminate your ability to reach immunity? Put this in context for us.
I think we have to be really careful, Savannah, about how we are communicating numbers. They mentioned this 80% protection after the first Pfizer and Moderna dose. That was reported out about a month ago. But, the devil is in the details here, because what the studies actually show is that second shot, not only does it push you up to that 95% efficacy in the clinical trial, but it generates what are called those neutralizing antibodies, pretty much like a 10-fold higher titer of those neutralizing antibodies, which are the ones that are so important in terms of fighting off the disease. And it also elicits that really robust T cell response, which is that other arm of the immune system that is so incredibly critical to preventing infection, as well as being able to protect against the variants. That, and really what we're talking about here is not just getting those numbers from 80 to 90, because that doesn't seem, that's subtle, but it's really about durability. And we just don't think that one dose is going to last as long as getting the second booster.
So Dr. Azar, that leads me very well to talking about our one dose shot, J&J, which is meant to only be one dose. So I know from talking to you here on this program, from talking to you on the phone, that you were hoping to see this, that they would reinstate this vaccine. Now, the way that it was working prior to this pause and the way that it's been working with Moderna and Pfizer during this time is you show up at your appointment and you get whatever it is that your doctor or that pharmacy is administering that day. So after this pause, we heard about a total of 15 cases, and 13 of those cases of these blood clots were in women ages 18 to 49. So it's coming with this warning shot of these rare blood clot cases. So if you're a woman in that age group, you show up at your pharmacy or your doctor's office, and that's what they're offering that day with this warning, what would you say to that particular patient?
The short answer is do not walk away, get that shot. The complexity of this was really played out on Friday with a 5-6 hour long deliberation about this. Clearly, the committee was their main goal was harm reduction, and the benefit of getting the shot from a public health perspective absolutely far outweighs the risk. But they also did stratify by sex and age. And yes, it is true that in that age group for women between 18 and 49, that clearly is the more susceptible, age range and demographic. But even in that group, 12 for every million shots that would be given, 12 deaths are going to be prevented, and hundreds of hospitalizations and ICU admissions are also going to be prevented. So even in that age group, Savannah, the benefit does outweigh the risk. But, if and when you get that J&J shot, you are getting a much updated fact sheet from the FDA in the EUA that really outlines symptoms to look for and really, as much as informed consent is possible in this scenario, women do need to be informed about this. And I think conversations also at a very granular level with your healthcare provider are important before getting the shot.
And I think an important reminder also is that part of the reason for this pause and one of the benefits of it was that it gave healthcare providers information for what to look out for and also how to treat it. So just tell us a little bit about what healthcare providers have learned during this time, even if this extremely rare thing were to happen, about how to treat people.
Right. So from the beginning, we sort of had this conversation about, be careful giving blood thinners to people with blood clots, which sounds really, illogical. And the reason is that the mechanism behind this is thought to be very similar to another immune reaction that is well known in the medical community. It's called heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. What happens in that scenario and what's happening here is that for various reasons, there's an immune system or immune response, I should say, that's triggered that is causing the person who gets the vaccine to make antibodies against his or her own platelets, which causes this huge clotting cascade at the same time it drops your platelets. Because there's the exact same response is seen in this condition called heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, person who comes in with this condition needs to get blood tested for those antibodies. If those antibodies are present, heparin is contraindicated. A non-heparin anticoagulant needs to be used. This is hugely important. And this was one, as you mentioned, one of the main reasons for the pause was to alert providers and educate them about this so that the right tests can be done and the right treatment can be instituted, Savannah.
And Dr. Azar, last question, I want to ask you about something that we were just talking with Erica Edwards about, the fact that the European Union says it could welcome fully vaccinated Americans. Now, Dr. Azar, the minute you tell me that it's safe to be on a plane to Italy, I am there. So I just want to hear from you as we're heading towards the summer, what you think just in general about people planning summer vacations, getting back to traveling if they're fully vaccinated.
Yeah, I think this is absolutely wonderful news, Savannah, for individuals, for the tourism industry, for the airline industry. I think it's great. I think, as Erica alluded to, the ripple there or the difficulty is going to be how to demonstrate that you are in fact vaccinated. And I would also remind people that, you might still need to be tested. You might still need to be quarantined. It's still going to be up, to the individual countries in the bloc as to what their rules and regulations are regarding this. But I think it's just really welcome news for all of us who want to see our lives, come back to normal and visit family and everything like that. So it's really great news.
Absolutely. It sure is. And it's great to hear that you think that it's great news and it can be done safely. Dr. Azar, great to see you on this Monday. Thanks so much.
You too, Sinai.
In North Carolina, calls are growing louder for body camera footage to be released after a man was shot and killed by sheriff's deputies. Andrew Brown Jr. died last week after deputies tried to serve a warrant for his arrest on felony drug charges. The circumstances surrounding his death remain unclear. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park joins us now from Elizabeth City, North Carolina. So, Kathy, first, explain what is holding up the release of the body cam footage.
Well, Joe, good morning to you. Here in North Carolina, there is a rule in place. Essentially, a judge needs to sign off on the release of this footage. But keep in mind, the shooting happened last Wednesday. So this community, Brown's family, they have been growing more and more frustrated as more time passes, and they don't have access to this footage. But later on this morning, we are told by the attorneys representing the family that they will be heading to the sheriff's office in hopes of seeing this footage. But I was asked, I asked them, is there any chance that they could potentially not see it? And they said that is also a possibility. So right now, it's unclear exactly when we will get more details on this footage. But once again, it needs to go through a judge, and that judge needs to grant access to whoever is filing this petition to get it released. Joe?
So, Kathy, the attorneys for the family, what are they saying about what happened?
You know what? They know just as much as we know. The local law enforcement here, the sheriff's department, has released very few details about this shooting. All we know is that the deputies were attempting to serve a search and arrest warrant at the time on Wednesday when things took a deadly turn. But we sat down with the attorneys representing the Brown family, and here is why they want to see this footage immediately. Take a listen.
The family is ready to see this body cam footage. We are ready. The petition is going to be made in Superior Court for a public release, but at minimum, the family should be allowed to see this body cam without delay.
We think it's pretty clear as to who can see it and who's allowed to see it. And I think they may have some concerns for other reasons, which we're not really privy to.
So according to the attorneys, they have been in direct contact with the county attorney, but not the sheriff. So later on today, they are supposed to be here at the sheriff's office in hopes to see that footage once again. But right now, there is no guarantee, it seems like, Joe.
Kathy, we do know that 7 deputies were involved in this incident. What is their status right now?
Joe, all of them have been placed on administrative leave, and 3 other deputies have also resigned. But we're told that it is not related to the shooting. And the sheriff over the weekend said that he also wants transparency. He is also submitting a petition to request that body camera footage to be released. He added that an outside sheriff's office will be brought in to investigate the shooting, and they will be questioning all those involved to see if any sort of disciplinary action will need to be taken.
All right, Kathy Park in North Carolina. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Let's now take a look at what's making news around the world this morning.
NBC News foreign correspondent Sarah Harmon joins us from London. Sarah, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Happy Monday to both of you. I want to kick things off in India, where the crisis there continues to unfold with COVID-19. The nation set a 5th-day record for COVID infections. Delhi hospitals are overwhelmed. Some are refusing patients. Some are out of oxygen. The U.S. has pledged to send medical equipment and protective gear to help. Turning to Indonesia, the country says all 53 people on board its missing submarine are dead. The military confirmed that the vessel had been found in pieces on the sea floor. This is 1 day after declaring it sunk. The cause is still uncertain. And finally, you guys have heard of Meals on Wheels. How about books on hooves? A camel is bringing books to poor children in Pakistan after many were left with nothing to read when school closed during the pandemic. This camel is visiting 5 villages a day, and guys, there are hopes to expand. Pretty cool. Back to you.
That's very cool.
I love the excitement over the books.
I know.
They're probably excited to see the camel. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of cooler than your teacher giving you a book, a camel giving you one. Sarah, thanks so much. See you in a bit.
And let's get a check on your morning news now weather.
Bill Cairns is with us. Good Monday morning, Bill.
Good morning. So how do you guys feel about the beginning of air conditioning season?
Well, it's nice that probably means that it's summertime.
Yeah. I don't know if mine works yet.
Yeah.
I just moved in. So ask me in a few days.
Too, yeah.
That is exactly where I was going with this, because it's like a nervous time. My house is like 120 years old, and the air conditioner is probably about the same age. And so I'm going into that same boat where it's like you turn it on and you're kind of just like, please be cold enough. Please be cold enough. But yeah.
And Joe's about to deal with his first New York summer, so.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I know. That's kind of like a different beast at night. The nighttime's the hard part in New York. All right, so let's get into the forecast and explain why we're talking about all this mess, because the people in the southern half of the country are like, yawning because they've had the air conditioning on for like months. So the big warm-up is happening and moving across the country, especially into the northern half of the nation as we go throughout this week. And it's all because of the slow-moving storm that's hit the West Coast this weekend and is now moving to the Rockies. The only problem is with a little bit of this warmth, we're going to have 1 day this week we have to worry about some severe weather, possibly some tornadoes. That's Tuesday afternoon and evening. So tomorrow, Oklahoma, Texas, the typical spots there in the plains. So now let's talk about this huge warm up, though. Today, we're going to be 92 in Kansas. We're going to be 90 in Omaha. And this warm air is just going to surge right across the country. We're going to be mid to upper 80s throughout the Midwest on Tuesday. Temperatures easily 15 to 25 degrees warmer than they should be. And then by the time we get to Wednesday, that's when I'm going to try to hit my air conditioner for the first time. 83 in New York. D.C. should be 87 degrees. And so that's going to be some warm, almost like summer-like temperatures heading to the east. So here's your forecast for today. A little still cool this morning in the Northeast, a little bit breezy too. Look at all the warmth in the middle of the country. And then tomorrow we watch that warmth start to surge to the eastern half of the country. So, Joe, odds are one of us is probably going to need a new air conditioner soon. Yeah. So, maybe we should just,
We'll chip in and
share
start a fund for
resources
ourselves
somehow.
or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was freezing this
start a
morning.
fund.
I can't believe it's going to be that hot in a couple days. That's kind of exciting. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy. It's so one of these time of years where you go to work with the heater on and you go back with the air conditioner on.
Exactly. All right, thanks. We'll see you in a little bit.
Coming up, we're at a key marker for the Biden administration. So how do folks think he's doing?
NBC News has the latest polling. We'll tell you where he stands next. President Biden is marking his 100th day in office this week, and a new NBC News poll shows more than half of Americans approve of the job he's doing so far. NBC News White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell has more.
A first report card for the president.
My first 100 days in office.
In a new NBC News poll, his approval rating stands at 53%, while 39% disapprove, placing President Biden ahead of Donald Trump, but behind Barack Obama at the same 100-day point. Of Republicans surveyed, just 9% approve of the president's job performance. Confronting the pandemic, Mr. Biden's stewardship earns a 69% approval, with a majority of Americans at 61% saying they believe the worst is behind us, including Tennessee Republican Scott Kerry.
And on the COVID response, I certainly think that he's taken the leadership role that I was hoping that he would.
But political discord, raw and contentious, is reflected in this big number. 82% surveyed say the country is divided rather than united.
The only way we come through this is if we come through together as Americans.
Turning to immigration, signs of trouble. Just 33% support the job he's doing. Among the sharpest critics, progressive Democrats, angered by the White House backtracking, then delaying a promise to welcome thousands more vetted refugees from around the world. The president says he will increase the refugee cap later. Democrat Austin Coker studies immigration.
I think it was a real shock to the conscience of a lot of people who are following immigration and refugee policy.
On the economy, the president's stewardship climbs to 52%. On gun policies, just 34% support his actions.
Do I agree with Biden 100%? Absolutely not.
But Michigan Republican Joe Farrington says he is satisfied with the president so far.
I think that he just needs to keep politics boring, and I think this country's going to fare pretty well.
So let's break down the numbers in more detail. Joining us now is NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray, who has been combing through every detail of the poll, and NBCNews.com senior White House reporter Shannon Pettypiece. Mark, let's start with you. The first 100 days may be arbitrary for some, but for others, it is a key benchmark that helps Americans weigh the president's policies. What have you learned from the poll?
Yeah, so overall, the top numbers was in that Kelly O'Donnell piece. You have 53% of Americans approving of President Biden's job so far. That's versus 39% who say they disapprove. And when you actually break it down by party, 90% of Democrats are backing Joe Biden's job, 61% of independents, but just 9% of Republicans. So a lot of polarization, but those independents are definitely pushing Joe Biden's number above 50%.
Mark, the poll also asked voters which issues are most important to them and how then is President Biden handling them. What did Americans have to say about that?
Yeah, his best numbers come on the coronavirus. 69% approve of his job in handling the coronavirus. They also end up having majority support for his handling of the economy at 52%. But then at the very bottom, it's the border and immigration just at 33%, where even a substantial number of independents have a problem with Joe Biden's handling of immigration and the border.
Mark, during the campaign and his inauguration, President Biden emphasized uniting the country. We heard that word over and over again, unity. Do Americans think he's succeeding, or is there a lot more work to do there?
Yeah, so here's the good news for Joe Biden in our poll. We have 52% of Americans who say that they approve of his handling and trying to unite the country. The bad news was in that Kelly O'Donnell spot. We still have 82% of Americans who believe the country is more divided than united versus 16% who say it's united. So he has a lot of work to do for an American public that still sees this nation very divided. And our poll actually shows it with Democrats and Republicans on different sides of most issues.
That's going to be a hard number to budge, at least in a short period of time. Shannon, I want to ask you, issues like border security and immigration have been front and center for President Biden in his first 100 days. As we just saw there, the poll tells us those are weak points for him right now. What is his administration doing to try to change that?
Well, I think administration officials even admit they're not happy with the job that has been done on immigration. They admit this is a problem they are trying to fix. They say they are working as hard as they can to fix it. But they're not even really satisfied with the situation that's going on at the border with immigration right now. They say they inherited a broken system from the Trump administration, and they're putting new measures in place, but that it's going to take time and encouraging people to be patient while they work through this. However, Republicans who I talk to are certainly very eager to seize on this. When you look at the poll numbers, you can see that's the one weakness that they can go after. We're quite a ways from midterm elections, but if this situation remains where President Biden's numbers continue to be so low in immigration, you can certainly expect Republicans to latch onto that and try and make it a campaign issue once again, like they did in 2016.
And Shannon, on Wednesday, the president will address a joint session of Congress for the first time in his administration. What can we expect from that?
Well, we can expect the president to lay out a lot of his accomplishments in his first 100 days, particularly around the pandemic. That's what the White House and the president see as the real highlight of his first 100 days is the response to the pandemic, the number of vaccines that have been administered, the way life is starting to get back to normal. But we also know the White House is going to spin this forward. And they've got a phase 2 of his infrastructure plan they plan to roll out that's mainly focused on childcare. He's going to talk about that as well as how to pay for that, which is going to include likely some tax increases on the wealthiest Americans.
And Shannon, I'll ask you real quickly here when we talk about the unity issue and trying to put a dent in that number. Is the infrastructure bill perhaps the place that President Biden can make some headway with that?
It is, and the White House says they continue to be open to talking to Republicans. Republicans put forward a counter proposal that was way lower than what the president had put out, but rather than writing it off or dismissing it, the White House said, okay, let's come in after the joint address to Congress next week. Let's have some Republican members sit down for meetings. Let's talk on the staff level. Let's try and work through this. So they're certainly continuing to work in that direction on this, which is much different than we saw with the COVID relief bill, where the White House and Democrats decided they had to just go it alone if they wanted to get something passed quickly.
Mark, to wrap this up and put a bow on it, what is your main takeaway from the poll?
Yeah, and it was actually the final quote in that Kelly O'Donnell piece on having politics become boring again. And maybe out of all the numbers that really struck at me was 55% of Americans in our poll saying that Joe Biden has kind of returned the presidency and government back to being kind of a more typical way of being president. Basically, bottom line, kind of a more normal presidency after the last 4 years of the Donald Trump presidency. And whether Americans actually see that as a good thing could end up being one of the secrets to Joe Biden's success. But it's still really early in these first 100 days.
All right. Mark Murray, Shannon Pettypiece, thank you so much for helping us break down these poll numbers this morning. Appreciate it.
As employers start to make plans to bring workers back to the office, some employees say they are not ready. They're stressed about it and they may never want to go back. NBC News correspondent Kristen Dahlgren has more.
Riley, thank you for sending over the agenda.
For Lindsay LeBennett,
before we get started,
a year of working from home.
There's a lot that I learned during this pandemic that I do love about working from home.
Will soon be coming to an end.
Is there anything that gives you anxiety about return to work?
I'm really worried about losing a little control of the personal things.
Like time with her 6-year-old.
I'm also anxious about just my schedule now. You know, I will have to travel. And so I'm anxious about being away from my daughter.
She's not alone. In January, a recent Gallup poll showed almost half of U.S. workers prefer to continue remote work.
Basically, I think I'm just going to be super anxious and super stressed.
Nerve-wracking. It makes me nervous.
I didn't realize how much I didn't like working in office until I didn't have to anymore, and I don't think I could ever go back.
Leaving businesses to figure out what a post-COVID workplace looks like.
I expect that the future of work is going to be very much a hybrid or distributed workforce. A lot of businesses are moving to a model where their employees have flexible work arrangements.
Vanessa Matsis-McCready is an associate general counsel and director of human resources. She gets it. Working from home has helped her balance life with her kids, but she's starting to prepare them and herself for a return to work. She says the first step is talking to your employer about how you're feeling and what you want.
If you don't communicate about what your hopes are and how you're feeling, they're not going to know about it, and they might think you're just fine. Don't forget that all of your colleagues are probably feeling anxious too.
Lindsay is looking forward to seeing colleagues and returning to many parts of her job in sports marketing if she can hold on to some of what she's learned over the past year.
You know, whether it is me saying I'm not coming to this meeting because I want to go to my daughter's gymnastics practice, or telling my daughter I'm going to miss gymnastics practice because I have a very important meeting. You know, we have to be able to extend grace to ourselves.
Grace to help embrace a new normal. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News.
Coming up, Hollywood's biggest night didn't exactly have that Hollywood ending many had hoped for.
No. The Best Actor winner that shocked the internet. Next. Here's one thing that has a lot of people talking. SNL has announced that tech billionaire Elon Musk will host the show on May 8th with musical guest Miley Cyrus. The announcement is attracting plenty of criticism online, with people tweeting, "I cannot think of a single person who wants this," and just delete the post and say it was a funny joke. The SpaceX chief engineer and Tesla CEO has also made controversial comments downplaying the pandemic, drawing plenty of criticism after the announcement was made. Musk tweeted, "Let's find out how live SNL really is." I think he also had like a purple devil emoji.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to get big ratings.
Definitely. I mean, aren't we all wondering, like, how's that going to go with it? I want to watch just to find out.
Yeah, it'll be intriguing, but definitely a lot of people aren't happy about it. There's a couple cast members who have put things on social media that suggest maybe they're not thrilled. So we'll see how that plays out.
Definitely. Also, I bet they'll address his child's name. Don't you think?
You would think that might be ripe for a comedy sketch.
Exactly.
We'll see.
All right. Can't wait. Thanks, Joe. Now, Hollywood's biggest night was back live and in person. After being delayed by 2 months due to COVID, the Oscars brought back the usual red carpet glamour, memorable speeches, historic wins, and some surprising upsets. NBC News anchor and correspondent Natalie Morales joins us now from L.A. Hi, Nat.
Hey, good morning to you, Savannah. Well, after a year of virtual award shows, it certainly was refreshing to see most of the A-list winners and presenters back in the flesh. But the biggest headline and winner of the night, diversity reigns supreme this year. However, it wouldn't be an Oscars without some controversy and a Hollywood twist.
Academy Award for actor goes to Anthony Hopkins.
Hollywood's biggest night ending in an upset and controversy this morning after actor Chadwick Boseman, who passed away last year, did not receive a posthumous Oscar for his role in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, losing to Anthony Hopkins, who won the coveted statue for his role in The Father, and also making history, becoming the oldest person ever to win an acting Oscar at 83 years old. The Academy Award usually ends with the announcement of Best Picture. Last night's ending on Best Actor, even more surprising considering Boseman did not win.
for many of his fans, so many Black Panther, Marvel fans who love Boseman and his work over the years, they really wanted this night to be a cathartic one for them.
Overnight, backlash from Boseman fans. Comedian Cyrus McQueen tweeting, "A dying man gives the performance of a lifetime, and you don't give him the trophy?" This morning, Anthony Hopkins hosting his acceptance speech from his home in Wales.
And I want to pay tribute to Chadwick Boseman, who's taken from us far too early.
The awards going to Hopkins and Best Actress Frances McDormand also meant that an expected historic sweep of acting awards by actors of color, including Boseman and Viola Davis, did not materialize. Still, a night of some historic firsts, including Chloe Zhao, who became the first woman of color and just the second woman ever to win Best Director for the film Nomadland.
What does that mean to you? And also, for this film.
If this win means more people get to live their dreams, I'm extremely grateful.
Some stars using the stage to speak out against racial injustice in the wake of the Derek Chauvin verdict.
As a mother of a Black son, I know the fear that so many live with, and no amount of fame or fortune changes that.
Movie mogul Tyler Perry received a special humanitarian award and called for unity in this time of divisiveness.
It is my hope that all of us would teach our kids, and not only to remember, just refuse hate. Don't hate anybody.
The show was also filled with lighter moments. Best Supporting Actress winner Ya Jung-yoon swooned after accepting her award from Brad Pitt.
Mr. Pitt, finally. Nice to meet you.
Come on, let's see. Let me see you do the butt.
Fellow nominee Glenn Close later showing off her dance moves. And Daniel Kaluuya giving a cheeky shout out to his parents after winning Best Supporting Actor.
My mom met my dad. They had sex. It's amazing. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm here. You know what I mean? So I'm so happy to be alive. Peace, love, and onwards.
I hope you could read her lips. I think she's like, what are you talking about?
Yes, please stop.
That was certainly one of the memorable moments of the night, that speech for sure. But, you know, Savannah, it was a year where we really celebrated film because this was a year where so many of us got through the pandemic watching film. So appropriately, many of the films that were nominated did get to take home Oscars last night. Nomadland winning 3 Oscars, as well as Mank. And The Father, Sound of Metal, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and Judas and the Black Messiah, each taking home 2 apiece. So it was pretty much spread out, which was great.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was good to see everybody back in person, some of those moments. And Nat, it's so cool that you got to talk to Chloe. I'm so excited for her.
She is incredible. And yeah, the movie, I think, certainly had an impact and really resonated during the pandemic. They talked about how it brought about a sense of community, you know, the nomads and how they lived in their community.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Nat. Good to see you.
See you later. Good seeing you.
Turning to politics, the Sunday morning shows often give us a lot of Monday morning moments. Meet the Press covered a range of topics yesterday, from a roundtable discussion on the future of policing to the end of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine pause. Here's a look at the highlights and more with MTP moderator Chuck Todd.
Well, good morning, Joe and Savannah. On this week's Meet the Press, we focused on police reform, the vaccine rollout, now that Johnson & Johnson pause has been lifted as well. Plus, we also released our new NBC News poll about President Biden's first 100 days in office, and we took a look at the latest climate change polling data. Here are some of the most important answers from Meet the Press compressed.
I am a police chief now of 2 major American cities. But before becoming a police chief or a police officer, you know, I'm an African-American man who grew up in an urban city. I am a father of 2 African-American children, my son and my daughter. And so I had to look at this through multiple lenses. I agreed with the verdict. It was the right verdict on all 3 counts.
I think the verdict was just. I think it was correct. It was right. But here's the thing, Chuck. 6 black people lost their lives at the hands of police after the verdict. And so the beat goes on, Chuck. I think we can celebrate the verdict in the Chauvin trial, but the question must be asked, will police behavior really change? And since that verdict, which was rendered on Tuesday, All the evidence says that nothing has changed.
To me, you cannot have true justice when chokeholds and knees on the neck are still being considered legitimate in some places. You cannot have true justice when a young kid can get stopped for an expired tag and then end up getting shot. You cannot confuse accountability for true justice. And that's why we must pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act to change this going forward. I'm not going to get ahead of the negotiations here, but the fact that we have senators on both sides that are seriously talking right now and moving forward on this is something we haven't seen forever, because I don't want just one verdict. I want to see systemic change.
The strong conclusion of that group was that the vaccine should go forward. It should be made available to everybody, but there should be a fact sheet that provides the information to everybody to understand what the nature is of this potential very rare side effect so that everyone is aware of the facts. And I think that was the right decision. I do think people will want to read the fact sheet. But when you consider the nature of this risk, this is truly a rare event. And when you measure that against the benefits of preventing somebody from dying of COVID, there's no comparison. We clearly have a situation where the benefits greatly outweigh the risks, even for younger women.
As we approach President Biden's 100th day in office, the president's approval rating among everyone sits at 53%. Against 39% are disapprove. When you narrow it down to just those who are registered voters, it narrows slightly. 51% approve of his job, 43% disapprove, 6-point net difference. That 43% looks familiar, though, if you've followed the polls last year. Still, either approval rating, by the way, is higher than Donald Trump had at any time during his presidency. He never touched 50 once. Mr. Biden gets high marks for handling of the coronavirus, the economy, and uniting the country. But there are warning signs here on guns and immigration in particular.
Coming up, we'll tell you why more and more major corporations are hiring a bit differently these days.
Why a college degree may no longer be necessary to snag that big job. That's up next.
Now to an age-old question. Do you need a college degree to land a high-paying job? It appears that some companies are now hiring applicants who don't have a degree. It's leaving many to wonder, is a degree really necessary? NBC News senior business correspondent Stephanie Ruhle has been speaking with workers who managed to find success without attending college. Stephanie, good morning.
Morning, Joe. Deciding to go to college is likely going to be the biggest investment you make in yourself or your children. And you know that conventional wisdom has always been a 4-year degree will lead to a more successful career. But that may be changing as more and more employers are starting to focus on skills, not just education. Watch this.
30-year-old Ali Alcala has it all. An apartment in New York City, a thriving career in HR at JP Morgan Chase, and more than $70,000 a year in income. What she doesn't have is a college degree.
Did you assume that investment banks were only for college grads, even Ivy League school grads?
I had no notion that you would be able to even get a foot in the door without a degree.
The global bank is actively recruiting people without college degrees through programs that pay them to train in careers like operations and consumer banking.
I didn't have a degree. My future was extremely uncertain. And the program kind of provided a clear way where I would be able to pursue a career path or journey.
I only went to college because my parents made me go to college.
Mark Benioff is the founder and CEO of Salesforce.
Everybody thinks that if you don't have a college degree, you can't be successful in the United States, and it's not true.
The average cost of a 4-year degree has risen to more than $10,000 a year for a public university and $37,000 for private, and more than half graduate with an average of $29,000 in student debt.
Then is college even worth it? It's expensive.
You can create incredible value for the world without a college degree.
I came to this country with a lot of aspirations.
After immigrating from Colombia, Juan Medina worked several jobs, including construction and car sales. College was out of the question.
If I went part-time, it was going to take me like 8 years to finish college and possibly some debt.
A much better alternative for Juan and his growing family, free online training with Salesforce that led not only to a job.
Now I feel like I have a career. There are a lot of opportunities out there.
More major corporations are abandoning the requirement of a 4-year degree. At Apple, half of their employees don't have college degrees. But this path is untested. Many jobs still require a bachelor's degree, and on average, a college graduate makes 67% more than a high school graduate. But as the cost of college rises, some say the returns aren't keeping pace.
The idea that to make a lot of money, you need to go to college, that's a thing of the past?
To make a lot of money, you just need to get the skills. You don't need to go to college. You can do it all online.
Ali Alcala sees only one reason why she'd pursue a diploma now.
Just to have it framed.
To have it framed. Joe, Savannah, you know there has always been this stigma attached to not going to college, but that could perhaps be changing. Not that it's not great to get a higher education, more learning is always better, but given the amount of time and money it costs, it's just not an option for a lot of Americans.
So, Stephanie, do you think more big companies are going to follow this trend of hiring non-college graduates, or is it too early to say for sure?
Without a doubt, we are seeing all sorts of companies change their job requirements, their educational requirements, depending on what specific role it is. And with more and more online training courses that are free, lots of companies, you saw, they're offering themselves, whether it's Google, IBM, or Salesforce. Employers realized even before the pandemic, we had a very tight job market. It's tight again, and we had a skills gap. So more companies and programs are saying, why don't we offer these skills to more people? And it's potentially going to bring us more potential employees and, as they focus on equity, a more diverse workforce.
Interesting story. Stephanie, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And it's time for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
CNBC's senior market correspondent Dominic Chu joins us today. Good morning, Dom.
Good morning, Savannah. Good morning, Joe. Well, speaking of technology and education, Huawei wants to pivot its U.S. sales towards software because sanctions on the company have hit its hardware business. Huawei is boosting its efforts in areas like cloud computing and technology that powers smart cars in hopes that software actually becomes a bigger part of the revenue mix. Those U.S. sanctions on Chinese Huawei in recent years have caused that smartphone sales to plunge over on that side of the business. The auto industry is feeling the impact of the global chip shortage, and that includes Volkswagen. Volkswagen is warning of a big production hit due to the shortage. That's according to the Financial Times. The head of the car maker's Spanish unit telling the FT that managers have been warned to brace for a bigger hit in the second quarter than the first because of that computer chip shortage. And Bitcoin, along with other cryptocurrencies, bouncing back today, higher by about 8%. The price of Bitcoin is now more than $53,000 per token after falling below $50,000 over the weekend. That's according to Coinmetrics. Although it's still, just guys, about $10,000 below the record high it hit earlier this month. Shares of cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase Global are also higher in the pre-market trade, up by more than 4%. Savannah, Joe, in trading so far this morning. Back over to you.
All right, Dom, thank you so much.
Thanks, Dom.
Now we turn to one green thing today, an environmental crisis driven by an explosion in the world's reliance on all things plastic. NBC News correspondent Carrie Sanders takes us to Tampa, Florida, to show us the hidden world of microplastics.
Sunrise over the Gulf of Mexico.
We're going to head around the point here up into Boca Ciega Bay.
We're with researchers from Florida's Eckerd College.
Just want to make sure that we're not tangled in any way.
Casting nets, not for fish, but to study something we can't easily see, microplastics.
What we can easily say is, yes, there's microplastics basically everywhere in Tampa Bay.
Microplastics the size of a pencil's eraser or smaller.
Oh, there's some plastic right there.
You can look out here and you don't see plastic, but yet it's all around us.
It's no surprise plastics litter the oceans, but it's how microplastics enter the environment that may surprise you. That fleece washes away microplastics with every load. A tire's wear and tear deposits rubber, but also tiny bits of plastics onto the road that eventually drain into waterways. Even your toothpaste includes them.
43.779.
Researchers here found Tampa Bay is littered with 4 billion particles.
There's probably a particle per liter.
One particle, one piece of microplastic.
Yes.
Per that bottle of soda that I have at home.
Per that container right there.
Is that a lot?
Yes, that is a lot. It's a lot higher in concentration than we find offshore.
It's not until the samples are brought to shore, mixed with reactive agents to luminesce, that the microplastics under a black light glow like stars in the Milky Way. all those little particles are?
Microplastics that we collected today.
Wow. And I could not see it out there.
Nope.
Wastewater treatment plants are often the last line of defense. What is all this?
So this, unfortunately, is all the unflushable items that people put down their toilets and their drains.
And if you didn't capture it here, this might become the microplastics out in the Gulf of Mexico?
Definitely. If there's larger pieces of plastic in there, they could be broken down into smaller pieces, and then that will become the microplastics.
Just to do our interview, I had to put on a safety vest that was, yes, wrapped in plastic.
Plastics are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. I mean, we're wearing plastic hats, right?
I had to take this out of a plastic
It's
bag.
a huge problem, right? So again, this all kind of goes back to the root. Like the root of the problem here is the plastics, all the plastics that are surrounding us. But how do we face that? We start with educating the public about these things.
How does a consumer say, I'm going to make a difference? Because we think we're recycling, we're putting our plastics where they should go, and yet the microplastics are still winding up in the Gulf of Mexico and our world's oceans.
So one of the things that we can do is we can start having this conversation with people. First and foremost, people need to know where all their water goes, right? I think if a lot of people knew that washing their hands, flushing their toilets, all that water and all that plastic contained in it comes to a facility like this, and how that then becomes our problem to have to try and fix all that, to clean that water, right?
Plastics have been somewhat demonized, but when you go to the store, you can't avoid it.
It's hard to avoid plastics.
Even for you, and you know what you're doing.
I'm not going to lie, but you know what? I try to do little things like I use reusable shopping bags, so that takes the plastic bags out of the equation. Now, I can't avoid having plastic in my tires, so if we're going to use them, let's try to use them in a way that's responsible. So we can try and eliminate some of the plastics in our lives. Realistically, will we get it all in our lifetime? I wish I could say we would, but we can start by educating.
But some people would just throw their hands up and say, this is not on me. I can't change it.
I know how frustrating that is. As an educator, I hear that argument all the time. People say, I can't change the world. And I say, yes, you can, because one person starts to make the change, other people will follow suit.
And what's in the water is also in sea life. How bad's the problem? One study suggests we are eating the weight of a credit card in plastic every week. If the plastic is in the ocean, is it making its way into the fish?
We know for sure that microplastics are being mistaken for food by the smallest organisms in the ocean, like krill or plankton even, and then that gets eaten by the next level up in the food chain, and so it will end up on our dinner plate.
Is that plastic going to cause me a health problem?
We don't know. We don't know. We're still trying to figure that out.
Microplastics, the smallest big problem that's hidden from view. Kerry Sanders, NBC News on Tampa Bay.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.